Hi, Resilient Sunshine. Today, I want to address a big misconception around burnout, especially around burnout recovery. Now, most of you must be familiar with what burnout is, and I'm making this assumption based on the statistics showing that 80% of the people in the UK being employed are probably burnt out. Burnout is defined as this extreme exhaustion, this extreme state of exhaustion that often ends with depression, in which you just can't take it anymore. It often transcribes into where our body just cannot take this mental health exhaustion and start showing symptoms. Now, to me, burnout is not just an exhaustion and a moment where your body just gives up on you. I do strongly believe that burnout is a symptom. Why it's a symptom? I do believe that often in life we are dragged by certain element of our childhood or the way we've been brought up, or certain elements within our lives that might have been traumatic and not processed in a certain way, leaving certain defense mechanisms or conditioning or consequences of that said development or trauma to have certain traits within ourselves, which lead us to treat ourselves in a way that exposes us to what ultimately end up as a burnout. That's not to say that you're causing your own burnout and to add any more guilt to your plate. Actually, on the contrary, what I'm trying here to do is just for us to be able to show ourselves a little bit more compassion, because with burnout comes a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. We usually tend to think that it is our fault, that we are weak, that we are not cut out for this, or we're finally showing weakness. But actually, I would say that burnout is here to save our life, because when we stay too stuck in our defense mechanisms that helped us go through some horrific things that might have happened to us earlier on in our lives, it actually is there to show us that we are in a state that is not sustainable for the long run. All the work that I'm doing around resilience is in order to help us live the most happier life possible in the most sustainable way. The idea is not to thrive for a few years and to completely crash later down the line, but actually to help empower you to be fully satisfied with your present moment, not being anchored in the future or stuck in the past, and be actually happy with who you are as well in the process. When we talk about enjoying the journey, it's the whole full-blown journey. It's not just appreciating little pieces of it that have been dictated to you by society or somebody else. It's actually finding out what truly ignites you in order for you to be at peace with every decision that you're making in life and everything that you're actually living. Now, burnout doesn't only happen when you're not living for yourself, but it might happen when you feel kind of stuck in a hamster wheel, just going through the motion, one thing after the other, and not even having any space to take a break, to be able to pause and be like, okay, whoa, what is going on in my life? Where am I heading? Am I actually fully enjoying what I'm doing right now? That's why we can actually work on burnout prevention. Making sure that you're actually carving some time to be able to pause and reflect isn't just to be able to go sip some green juices during retreats or be able to pause and take that yoga class. It's way beyond all the well-being diktats that are telling you, take care of yourself, wake up at 5 a.m., eat clean, exercise, do this, do that. No. It's actually a moment to pause where you're not doing anything but reflecting about your own internal state. It's a moment where you can focus on what are your true emotions. How is your nervous system feeling? What is it telling you? Because the thing is, when we are in the hamster wheel, we are not listening to ourselves. We are listening to all the possible external factors around us. We are listening to our environment, our external environment, and we are not listening to what's happening within. When I burned out, I essentially was constantly striving to look for external validation everywhere else but within myself. And nothing I would receive was ever enough because I didn't feel like enough. And eventually it took losing everything to realize that, to actually realize that I was trying to fill a void within myself that only me had the actual power to fill. Once you realize that, for example, you are able to put in place the necessary actions to change your internal state, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, and actually to have a little more stable mental health. And sometimes it's normal to feel guilty for that. We have family, we have loved ones, we have people that we need to show up for, and therefore we get stuck in certain emotions because it feels like our duty. But just remember one thing, you can't pour for an empty cup. So what are you doing every single day to replenish yours? On that note, please like, subscribe, and share, and especially leave in the comment what is one action that you make sure to take in order for your cup to remain full enough to serve others and the people that you love in your life. See you in the next video.